Pretty creepy, but did you notice the clear shadow just off-screen to the right? Could this be the silhouette of creepy Anna? Why would she be so coincidentally out of the shot though? Bit sus, innit? Could it truly be a roaming spirit, or is someone trying to give us the runaround?
Your diagnosis can change how you envision your future. But your next step is still up to you. How will you approach your treatment? Ask your doctor if Amvuttra could be right for you, and get a full view of what Amvuttra can do. Learn more about Amvuttra at amvuttra.com/nextstep.
I made a concept candle brand just so I could make a cool box for it, and I used Adobe Illustrator to bring that vision to life. The scent I came up with is called Bloomberry, a combination of spring flowers and fresh fruit. I had to make sure the box was exactly 3 inches wide, so I used the dimension tool to make sure it was just right. I decided to make a second version that was a little bit taller, so I used Generative Expand to resize this side of the box. It's such a cool trick when you need multiple variations of the same design. Try Adobe Illustrator out for yourself. It's free for your first 7 days.
When paranormal investigators head out for a case, they usually come armed with gear, cameras, EMF detectors, spirit boxes, the whole ghost hunting shebang. But YouTuber and paranormal investigator Ye Carter, official, decided to do things a little differently. He took on a case involving an abandoned apartment in India that's said to be haunted by a child, and according to past occupants, this place turns into a full-blown nightmare factory once the sun goes down. We're talking phantom footsteps sprinting down hallways, objects launching themselves like they're sick of being in the house, and an overall vibe that makes you seriously consider living in a tent instead. Naturally, our guide decided to explore the place, solo, with just a camera and a twist. He used a red light spectrum to enhance paranormal visibility. Spoiler, it worked a little too well.
एक नए कंसेप्ट पे एक नए हॉन्टेड हाउस में मैं एक पैरानॉर्मल इन्वेस्टिगेशन करने आया हूँ, जहां पर रेड लाइट में यूज कर रहा हूँ. रेड लाइट में चीजें ज्यादा दिखती हैं, ज्यादा कैप्चर होती हैं. ओ तेरा भला हो. देखो आपने कौन है यहाँ पर? सुनाई पड़ता है और कहते हैं कि दिखता नहीं है वो क्लियरली, पर वो ये देखो क्लियरली दिखता नहीं है.
Chair basically tries to leave the room by itself. Then the chair he sat on tries to peace out too. Now, the red light might make it easy to hide any strings or tricks if this were fake, but according to him, this setup actually helps the entities manifest more clearly. But before you throw your noses up in disbelief, let's talk about some facts. Ye Care does his investigations alone, and this house has been abandoned by the occupants. So basically, he's alone with his single camera, a red light, and apparently a ghost with serious trust issues. Of course, we wouldn't expect you to take his word for it, but judging by what happens next, we believe he might be up to something. See for yourself.
वो सामने देखो, कोई चीज पड़ी है, डंडा सा है, पता नहीं क्या है, हवा में उड़ता हुआ दिख रहा है सामने कैमरे में. वो देखो, एक मिनट रुको, मैं कैमरा उठाकर दिखाता हूँ. चलो लाइट थोड़ी और तेज कर लेता हूँ. ये देखो, ये मैं यहाँ पर इंट्रो दे रहा था बैठकर, ये मेरा बैग वगैरह पड़ा है, और ये देखो, और ये वाइपर है, पानी वगैरह जो बाथरूम में यूज करते हैं। और ये देखो, इसके भी मैं आपको दिखा देता हूँ घुमाकर। ये देखो, पता नहीं कैसे क्या हुआ है, आपने देखा होगा कि वहां से यहाँ पर, ओए, क्या हुआ है?
Like a witch broom on self-driving mode, the bathroom wiper lifts itself from the ground before dropping back to the ground.
ओए,
And to shut the skeptics down, he films it up close to show that there were no strings or anything attached to the objects. But this haunted house wasn't done showing off yet, because as he moved towards the bedroom, the door started shaking until he unlocked it. And that's when this happened.
घर वालों ने वो जो करते हैं ना, वो उसके हाथ है। देखो, ओए 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 ओए, दरवाजा अपने आप खुला यार। इस गेट को खोलता हूँ पहले।
It's almost as if the house is trying to tell him something horrible happened in that bedroom. He found out in the most terrifying way.
कौन है? रेड लाइट में जो कमाल दिखाया है ना, तो पूरी वीडियो देखना, मैं आपको बोल रहा हूँ, फिर आपको समझ में आएगा। आगे चलते हैं। फिर आवाज आई, ये बच्चे की आवाज आ रही है। ये अभी एक बच्चे की आवाज आई यार। ओए 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 ओए, ओ ये देखो, बोल रहा हूँ ना। ओ जैसे ही अभी मैं आपको बोलना शुरू किया है ना, बच्चे की आवाज आई अभी। यहाँ पर गिलास वगैरह पड़े हैं।
Once inside the room, where the unholy vibes hit peak levels, he sees curtains being flung forward as if someone pushed them from behind, not pulled, not breezed, pushed. Then he hears a child's voice.
फिर आवाज आई, ये बच्चे।
The same voice the former residents claimed stayed with them even after they moved out. Could it have come from outside? A speaker? How do you even explain the wardrobe swinging open by itself? At this point, most people would have gotten enough reasons to call it a wrap. But our guy wanted more for his viewers. So he dared the ghost take a look.
मैं आपको चैलेंज दे रहा हूं, आत्मा को चैलेंज दे रहा हूं, इस घर में कोई भी है, मेरा चैलेंज एक्सेप्ट करो। दोनों दरवाजों को कैमरे के सामने, हमारे दोस्त देख रहे हैं, कैमरे के सामने बंद करके दिखाओ। अब इसका क्या जवाब दोगे? मतलब कैमरे के सामने बिल्कुल कैप्चर हुआ है। ये देखो, ये देखो, ये देखो, ये देखो, ये देखो, फिर आवाज आ रही बाहर से कोई। मेरे मालिक, कौन है वहाँ? इधर भी कमरा है, तो नहीं है कोई? समझ में नहीं आया। हे मेरे मालिक, समझ में नहीं आया कौन है। आसपास आपको फ्री में दिखा देता हूँ। ये पूरी लोकेशन है।
After seeing one of the doors close by itself, he dared the ghost to close both doors. And right on cue, the door shuts with no one in sight or any logical explanation whatsoever, just straight up paranormal flexing. But then, things take another terrifying turn.
कुर्सी पे तो क्या बैठूं? मुझे लगता है यहाँ से निकलना चाहिए। ओए, 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 कुर्सी कहाँ जा रही है देखो। सामने देखो। देख लो।
He hears the sound of another chair dragging, only this time, when he trails the chair with his eyes, he finds himself staring into the eyes of an eerie, dark figure standing silently in the corner. So now the question is, was this the ghost child the residents talked about? Or is this some far darker entity using that innocent image to lure people in? Either way, Yakar did what any sane person would do. He packed up his gear and got the hell out of there.
सामने देखो। देख लो।
What started as a normal night quickly turned into a scene straight out of a horror movie for TikToker Brandy Nettleton. From her son's upstairs bedroom, his room and his room only, came the kind of sounds you pray not to hear when you're home alone. Doors slamming, footsteps creaking, and faint voices whispering that they got secrets to share. The kicker, the son wasn't even home. Brandy explains in a video that no one else ever uses this room, but as the noise escalated, she knew she had to check it out.
I'm at the stairs right now. Did you hear that? Is it like somebody walking up there? Bro, my fucking eyes are watering. This is scaring me. Hold on. Oh my god, as soon as I stopped it, I heard it. Fucking shit. I know you guys heard that. I hope I caught that. Did you hear it? Oh my god. Oh my god, I'm scared. Okay, I'm gonna turn. Look, nobody's up here. Oh my god. Look at his door is closed. Oh my god. Nope. 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 Nope.
Brandy stops dead at the bottom of the stairs, her face a mix of terror and why am I even doing this vibes. You can tell she's debating her life choices before finally taking a deep breath and creeping up the steps. But just as she reaches the top, bam, the white bedroom door flips open like it's got somewhere to be. Her reaction, A+ relatable.
Nope. 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 Nope.
She nopes right back down the stairs, straight to her daughter, hoping for some backup. Instead, her daughter hits her with the old nervous laugh and "Mum, you're overreacting" shrug. Spoiler alert, she wasn't overreacting. This was just a warm-up. Watch what happens next.
Okay. Oh my god, that scared me. And it sounds like somebody's walking around up there, and I got it on recording. Yes, homie. Look at his door is moving. Okay, we're gonna go up there and I'm gonna show you guys. Nobody is in his room. He is not here. Turn your flashlight on. Oh my god. Hurry up there. Come up here so you can point it to show nobody's in the room. Look. Look. Nobody's in here. Nobody. You guys literally, you seen that in real time with me. Oh my god. Oh my god, I'm freaking out. Oh no. I told you guys. And there's been that mimic. And my daughter has heard it when I'm not here. It says my name, or it says her name in my voice when I'm not here. It says my name in her voice when I'm not here. And or when she's not here. And now that's happening with my dog. Well, fuck no, fuck no. Fuck no, I'm dead. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm like, under the side of the house no more. Oh my god.
While they're trying to process the door's little solo performance, things escalate. The door swings open again, like it's got a vendetta.
Well, fuck no, fuck no. Fuck no, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done.
And this time, both Brandy and her daughter are there to witness it. Cue full-on panic mode. The two bolt downstairs and the video cuts off, leaving us with more chills than answers.
I'm under the side of the house no more. Oh my god.
Could this be the work of a mimic? A sinister entity known for imitating voices, footsteps, and slamming doors to lure its prey?
Oh my.
Or is there another explanation for the bizarre chaos in Brandy's home?
Well, fuck no, fuck no, fuck no.
Whilst recording a Snapchat video to send to their friend, this person felt the air in the room shift as they pressed record. They thought nothing of it until they watched the footage back and realized that something else might have come with that strange feeling in the air. If you missed it, don't worry, it's pretty hard to spot. But take a closer look. A hunched over shadow figure glides past the doorway, only visible for a split second. Who knew Billy the puppet from the Saw movies was still pedaling around?
Solo camping in the woods either sounds like a dream come true to you or your worst nightmare. For this guy over and under the weather, there's nothing more relaxing than taking on the elements in the Scottish valleys armed with his waterproof fold-up equipment. But during this specific camping trip, the survival element became much more present as the night went on. Everything was going according to plan, aside from some spilt milk.
Be gone. Gonna switch you off and then eat this because it's going to be a messy business. So, see ya. Right, I think that's me ready to settle in. Trying out the new bag. It says pretty cozy. I think I'm actually going to be too hot. That's about it. So,
He got the fire going, made some food, and settled into his sleeping bag. But he didn't get the peaceful night's sleep that he was hoping for.
Nice. Good night. Don't go to bed, Bucks, mate. Hello? 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 The thing is, I'm kind of on an island here, so there's river on that side, river on that side. It's really hard to get down here. There was a human, that is. Hello? Typical, now I can't hear a thing. Right, I'll turn the light off.
Whatever that small sound was, he brushed it off in the beginning, opting to think about how difficult it would be for anyone or anything to get to where his tent was situated. So he turns off the light, ready to doze off again, until this happens.
I've got a knife in here. I've got a knife. I've got a knife. Right. Well, that definitely sounded like somebody there. But it's coming here. Every time I come out, it's empty. Unless I come out the fucking river. I don't even think. No, because as I said, I'm basically on an island, so there's no way that anyone can actually get it. Jesus Christ! Hello? 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 Jesus Christ! Fuck that. Hello? Did that noise again? It sounds like somebody laughing outside with it. I have no idea. Well, it's just the kelpies. Oh. Hello? Right, I might have to leave. I can't leave, so I'm stuck here for the whole night. If I don't make it, this is my last will and testament, right? You're the last person to see me alive. Yeah. So they say, how did you sleep? I'm like, great. Like a psycho with a knife. Good night. Good night. Good night. What the hell's that? Oh, stop up. Right. Come on, big scaredy cat. That's it. That's good. Lights off. Oh, God. What a night that was. Oh, I was terrified. It sounded like hysterical laughing. That woke me up. Yeah, I just heard people, somebody, noises around there.
After managing to get through the night sleeping with a knife in his hand, he wakes up unscathed at 8 a.m. and says that he thought the noises were that of human laughter. But a lot of commenters said that they thought the noises sounded like vicious growls. And to make matters even worse, he says that he also heard noises coming from one of the rivers surrounding him. Now look what he saw on the other side of the riverbank.
Some person has become rather unfortunate. But as expected, everything seems in order. Yeah.
Not saying it all points to there being a werewolf in a secret Scottish glen, but it sure seems that way.
The YouTube channel AK Explorations took a ghost hunt to the Grand Opera House in Macon, Georgia. And before they even had a chance to set up their gadgets for the spooky showdown, they captured something absolutely terrifying. But to fully comprehend the paranormal evidence they captured that night, first, we need to understand why this place is the ultimate paranormal hotspot. Built in 1884, the Grand Opera House is a jaw-dropping piece of history. It started as a vaudeville opera venue, became a movie theatre, and eventually transformed into a beautifully restored stage for live performances. On the surface, it's all glitz and glamour, but beneath the surface, it's got more ghost stories than a campfire at stupid o'clock. Legend has it, tragic deaths from its early days and the emotional energy of performers who's graced its stage have turned this spot into Ghost Central. The most infamous tale, an actor who met his untimely end here in the late 1800s. Since then, visitors have reported seeing a ghostly figure creeping around backstage. And that's not all. People have described curtains swaying with no breeze, disembodied singing floating through the air, creepy applause as if a phantom audience is still enjoying the show, and even the icy touch of a ghostly hand on their shoulder in the dressing rooms. You name it, it's happened here. Fast forward to current times, while access to the Grand Opera House is limited to the public, AK Explorations managed to snag an invite. And just as they headed backstage, this happened.
That's cool. I want to go up to a couple of them up top. With 18 something. We're going to go right here so we see this. Let's look out here on this side. Look. Wow. Who's back there? I waited. I saw someone walk back there. No, they're all on the stage, and the guy's right there. On the bottom, we'll see the camera as soon as walk by there.
Did you catch that? A shadowy figure darted across the room, slipping behind the red curtains like it had somewhere to be. They later asked the guys on the stage if they saw someone passing by, but they saw nothing. That area was empty, of living beings, that is. According to them, no one else was supposed to be in the theatre at that time. So, who or what was playing peekaboo behind those curtains? But that's not the only strange sight they caught on the camera that night.
Let's sit here for a minute. Let's sit here for a minute. Actually.
As they explore the upper deck, their camera captures some strange anomaly seemingly gliding over the stairs. While some might put it down to a piece of hair or fluff, we analysed the entire video and never found anything that could even begin to look like that during the whole investigation. No visible hairs, spider webs, or dust flying around. Nada. So could this prove that the spooky legends of the Grand Opera House are true, or just a couple of strange coincidences happening on camera that night? We'll let you decide.
On a quiet Friday night, while just trying to handle some laundry, this lady got the shock of her life. Everything was chill, just hanging clothes to dry, until she turned away for a split second. And bam, this happened. Take a look at the bone-chilling footage caught on her security camera. Being home alone, with her husband working late, she swore it was the first time anything like this had ever happened. They were sure the house wasn't haunted, until now. Judging by the way the rack crashed violently to the floor, though, it's pretty hard to deny there might be some otherworldly stuff at play. I mean, clothes don't just get yeeted off a drying rack, and racks don't topple over with no wind. Did you catch the cat bolting right before everything went haywire? Of course, there could have been strings pulling everything, but we don't see any in the footage. Could it have been a pesky poltergeist having some fun? You decide. Let us know in the comments. A faded figure of a lady with long black hair, dressed in white, walks past the walls, across the corridor, and into the walls again, TikToker, as she undoes the wrappings before looking back forward. Using every ounce of courage in their hearts, our brave explorers go to see who might have gone into the room.
You're watching Classified Captures. Now stay with us all the way to the end of this video, because we've got some freaky stuff for you this week. Now let's get on with it. The last thing anyone expects to see coming out of a truck is a group of monkeys. But that's exactly what happened in Mississippi on the 28th of October 2025. A large transport truck overturned on the road, and dozens of monkeys escaped from within it. Strange but funny, right? Well, not exactly. You see, these were not just ordinary monkeys. No. These ones were reportedly infected with multiple diseases, including hepatitis, herpes, and even COVID. From what we've learned from the reports, these monkeys were being used for laboratory testing. Beyond these obvious facts, there's been a tight lip on the crash, including which organization was transporting these monkeys, and even the name of the driver behind the wheel. Based on everything we know so far, however, we can say that they were likely being transported to a former research facility. At the time of making this video, authorities have confirmed that only one of the monkeys has been captured so far. The rest are still on the loose. And that's concerning because monkeys can be highly aggressive, especially when stressed or frightened. They bite, scratch, and spread disease easily through contact. So, for now, locals in the area have been warned to stay alert and report any sightings. It's a bizarre and dangerous situation with wild monkeys infected with lab diseases running free, so stay safe out there, because the last thing you want is one of these monkeys getting aggressive with you. What's more, they got some of the most dangerous diseases known to man out there with them. I know we've only just started this whole video, but quite frankly, am I the only one who thinks that you gotta be an absolute sociopath of a scientist to lock innocent, terrified animals up in a cage in the first place and experiment on them? Poor little bastards. It's always fascinating to think about where people get the inspiration for legends, myths, and cryptid creatures. I wonder if these beings are purely from imagination, or if someone actually saw something that sparked the story. Because even after all this time, we still can't tell if some of these creatures are real, or just a mix of folklore and fantasy. Now, this next footage adds to that mystery. It was shared by someone who was walking through a wooded area when they spotted something unusual. It was a tiny humanoid figure with wings fluttering near the trunk of a tree. You can actually see it hovering around a hole in the base of the tree, almost like it was guarding or entering it. The figure looks exactly how you'd imagine a fairy to look, small, delicate, with visible wings, but not that bright, sparkly Tinkerbell type. This one looks rather ugly and eerie. Some are convinced it's real evidence of fairies or elemental beings, while others believe it's just another AI-generated hoax. With how good AI visuals have gotten, it's hard to tell anymore, but it still makes you wonder where these stories really started from, and if some of them weren't just stories after all. Now, this next footage might add more weight to what we saw earlier. It comes from a home security camera, and what's caught on tape looks eerily similar to the tiny winged creature from the woods. This time, the figure actually enters a house from outside. You can see it flying through the air. At one point, it even comes close enough to the camera that you can make out its features more clearly. It's an interesting piece of footage because the appearance matches almost perfectly with the one from the forest. The same frail build, same wing movement, and that same strange hovering motion. Now, if both these clips are real, does that mean that these creatures actually exist? Maybe not the friendly, glittery kind we see in fairy tales or Disney movies.
Vino de entonces de por Doña Vicky, ¿verdad? Ahí va. Ay, mira mi madre. Mírala, mírala.
Back in the early 1900s, there were reports of a strange and unusually large species of bear discovered by a man named Betchman, which led to the creature being called Bergman's bear. The first sighting dates back to the 1920s and was described as much larger than any known bear species. But after that, the trail went cold. No one ever captured one, and no solid evidence was ever presented. So over time, Bergman's bear faded into legend, often being labeled a cryptid. Recently, though, a photo was surfaced online that reignited the mystery. It shows what appears to be a giant bear, towering and broad, standing far more upright than a normal bear would. Its front legs seem unusually long, its hind legs shorter, and its body slightly hunched, giving it an odd look. At first it looks real, but then again, in this age of AI-generated images, many are skeptical. Some believe this could finally be proof of Bergman's bear, possibly a rare northern species thought to be extinct. Others think it's just another convincing AI creation. Whatever it is, the image has everyone talking again about the old legend of the giant bear that once roamed the north. So what do you make of it? Now, while we're still debating whether fairies are real or not, something else just as strange has surfaced from the Yosemite National Park. A man visiting the park was out taking photos of the breathtaking view and the tall tree line when he captured something odd. At first, the photo looks normal, though slightly grayish, as if there was a bit of a glare on the lens. But right at the center, there's this strange patch of a circular distortion with a purple and pinkish hue to it. It looks like some kind of invisible barrier wobbling, just like the portals you see in sci-fi movies when someone touches their surface. The man who took the picture first assumed it was just a lens flare, but after looking closely, he realized it didn't match any usual camera artifact. Now that's where things get interesting. If this isn't a glitch or some trick of the light, then what are we looking at? Could it be some kind of natural energy distortion? Or if you want to think of beyond the ordinary, a real portal? It's hard to say, but whatever it is, it doesn't look like something you can easily explain away. What do you think? It's true that most people around the world enjoy eating meat, and it's part of many cultures and diets. But recently, there's been a growing wave of concern about what's really ending up on our plates. More and more disturbing videos and photos are surfacing online showing meat that looks nothing like what we're used to. In some clips, people buy red meat from a market, cook it, and when they press a spoon against it, it just melts like mashed potatoes instead of breaking apart like normal meat. Others show pieces that, when cut open, look spongy, full of holes and strange textures. One person even found what appeared to be the jawbone with teeth still attached to their meat. These images have shocked people everywhere and triggered concerns about what's really going on in the food industry. Now, this isn't the first time complaints like this have surfaced. Food quality seems to be getting worse and people are noticing it. Some say it's fake meat disguised as real, while others believe there's something much darker going on, like synthetic meat, or even claims that human remains might be showing up in the food chain. Scientists have been working on lab-grown meat, which is meant to be safe and sustainable, but what many people are finding in their markets doesn't seem to fit that category at all. So now, meat lovers are rethinking their choices. What used to be a normal meal has turned into a source of fear and doubt. Whether it's a case of poor production, contamination, or something more sinister, well, we've no idea. What we do know is that something about our food supply feels off, and people are starting to notice. We've seen countless UFO sightings over the years, but most of them are reported high up in the sky, hovering above the clouds, blending into them or cloaked. But this new footage out of San Francisco is something entirely different. A local resident shared a video they recorded late at night while standing in the neighborhood. From a distance, they noticed a strange light flickering through the trees at the edge of the dark tree line. Curious, they zoomed in, and what they captured is unlike the usual streetlight or passing vehicle glare. The lights appeared in a pattern arranged in a way that suggested structure. You could see distinct white and red lights, some of which seemed to blink in sequence, almost like signals coming from a hidden craft. The more people examined the footage, the less it looked like something ordinary. It didn't resemble headlights, lampposts, or reflections. Instead, it gave the impression of a craft partially concealed behind the trees. Some viewers believe it might have been a UFO that landed or was hovering low, using the darkness and tree line as cover. Others think it could have been a drone swarm or even a construction light setup that just looked strange from afar. But no one has come forward to explain what those lights really are, and no official source has confirmed anything unusual in the area that night. For now, it remains another strange, unclassified sighting. So do you think something was really hiding among these trees? Halloween is supposed to be scary, fun, and freaky, but not the other kind of freaky that's been going on lately. A worker from a Halloween shop recently shared a rather uncomfortable experience that's been happening at their store. Apparently, some men have been coming around to buy animatronics, and women have been buying witch broomsticks, which, by the way, vibrate, and then return them after a Halloween night with human fluids on them. Yes, you heard that right. The work.
I think that was as far back as either 1920s or 1930s. It was that far back the U.S. only had 3 fleet level aircraft carriers like that. And that was obviously a very long time ago. That was almost 100 years ago, actually, getting close to it. So if you go by that number and that length of time to actually build up to 11 aircraft carriers, then China's got a very long way to go. Like they're not anywhere near the same level as the United States Navy.
Oh, yeah, they're nowhere close at all. And on top of that, they have to be able to eventually produce a carrier that can actually field the numbers of aircraft that a single U.S. aircraft carrier can. Because if they had, right now, if they had the same number of aircraft carriers that we had on paper, which would be about 11, if they also had 11, they would still be able to only field about half the number of aircraft in any given moment that the U.S. Navy could with the very same 11 aircraft carriers, because Chinese aircraft carriers are smaller in size and just do not carry the complement of aircraft that we do. And that also means that their abilities are greatly limited as well, because not every single aircraft on an aircraft carrier is a combat aircraft. So when you hear that number 50, that doesn't mean that they have 50 combat aircraft on board that can launch anti-ship missiles or engage enemy aircraft, and so on and so forth. Some of those aircraft are going to be helicopters for anti-submarine warfare purposes. Some of those aircraft are going to be AWACS aircraft like E-2 Greyhounds that only give an eye in the sky but don't have any way to actually engage an enemy force or even defend against them for the larger part. There's also going to be specially built strike aircraft that really have no offensive aerial capabilities or air interdiction capabilities. There's also going to be some other units on board that are very specialized, like electronic warfare aircraft, which also have really no offensive capabilities. So when you break that down, a U.S. aircraft carrier could still have about 40 or 50 combat operational aircraft on board, while China's aircraft in aircraft carriers would only have about 30 or less, meaning that we're outnumbering them 2 to 1, at least in terms of multi-role aircraft in a naval engagement if those carriers went head-to-head at some point in the future. So that is a huge disparity.
Huge disparity. I'm talking about massive disparities. We're talking about disparities of magnificent proportions here. Terrible disparities.
Terrible disparities. And then on top of that, the number one death knell is if they don't give this thing a proper escort and a carrier strike group, this thing's dead before it even got out to sea. Because without a proper carrier strike group to be able to defend the carrier in the form of destroyers and cruisers, if they don't have enough of those to each of these carriers are absolutely screwed. They will be killed by a U.S. nuclear-powered attack submarine, and that will be the end of the story. We won't even really have to worry about these much farther than where they're at port right now. But moving on out of the People's Republic of China and all of the ongoing developments that we're seeing with their ongoing and continuous armament programs, we are going to be moving our way on over and into the Indo-PACOM Command at Camp H.M. Smith inside of Honolulu, Hawaii, as they did make a statement about the North Korean missile launch that was conducted last night. And here's the statement as follows. We are aware of the missile launch and are consulting closely with our allies and partners. While we have assessed that this event does not pose an immediate threat to U.S. personnel or territory or to our allies, the missile launch highlights the destabilizing impact of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea's actions. The U.S. remains ready to defend the U.S. homeland and our allies in the region. So that is a statement confirming that we watched the launch, and that is our response, at least at the moment. Of course, the North Koreans do stupid stuff all the time, so that wasn't really anything shocking last night, to be entirely honest with y'all. And basically, that statement is saying, we noted that they're doing that, and we'll blast them if they ever act a little too stupid. So moving on out of the East Asian area and Indo-PACOM at large, we are now going to be moving our way on into the area of the Middle East, as we've actually gotten some really interesting news once more out of the Islamic Republic of Iran and the ongoing crisis that is evolving in the capital of the country, Tehran. We have been able to hear more government statements today, including this one from Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, who is warning in an interview with SNN that if rain does not arrive in Tehran by late November, the government will be forced to begin water rationing and potentially evacuate the capital. Severe drought conditions have already begun to strain Iran's agricultural output, energy production, and industrial operations. To give you all a little bit of additional information, we also have a little bit of additional news right here. According to Iranian state media, they have reported that the capital is in a state of red alert and that the province's state-controlled water company will cut off water to households using double the standard amount of water daily. They claim 61% of Tehran uses more water than they need, and that if they cut their water usage, water rationing may be avoided.
Man, they're using more water than they need. Yeah, honestly, like that's an excellent factor when you want to live in a country that's authoritarian, is that they determine how much water you need. It's like, I would assume that these households are probably using what they need to use, because the Iranians are not very rich, by the way. So I'm assuming they're not just running water and letting it waste on the sidewalk or something, because they have to pay for it. So, you know, this sounds like bogus to me. It sounds like they're trying to cope with the fact that they're having a major water crisis and they can't really handle it, because it's like, who are they to say who needs what water? It's like they're just going to start arbitrarily cutting the water off. That sounds like cope.
Actually, I'm going to be honest here. That isn't really too much of a cope, actually. This is actually an issue that the U.S. is dealing with and we're not wanting to address head on right now. And it's actually something that affects our area directly, the Salt Lake City area. Did you know that?
About the water problems here?
Yeah, about the ongoing water problems that we're having here in the U.S. Southwest right now.
Yeah, but it's like nowhere close to what Iran's dealing with, though.
Oh, no, actually, ours is worse. Like, it's just not
I don't know
really
about
talked
that.
about. Oh, yeah, like, it's incredibly bad. Because right now there is a severe possibility within the next decade at least of a region-wide drought, pretty much knocking out all fresh water supplies to places like Salt Lake City, Las Vegas, the cities of Phoenix and Tucson, as well as Albuquerque and other major cities through the area because of the overconsumption of water. Places like Lake Powell and Lake Mead, which are probably the best examples that have been seen so far, are almost entering states of Deadpool annually at this point, and are also continuously being overconsumed even at this point still. The situation that's actually happening in Tehran is because of the same mismanagement that's actually happening in the United States right now, and I'll explain here really briefly. Tehran is in a very arid region of the world. It is practically in the middle of a desert. And deserts are not in incredibly rich areas in terms of water supplies. And for that reason, there is an actual cap on the population that can be sustained within an arid desert-like area until you start to overconsume the water. The first thing that goes usually is the above ground water supplies. Usually that's in the form of dams and aquifers that we've created artificially to be able to stockpile water. Usually those start to run out and we start to see them running out. And so we'll immediately tap into a backup supply to be able to try and ensure that our above ground water reservoirs are not running out directly. And that's usually groundwater supplies. Groundwater supplies, at least in a desert, are also quite finite as well and eventually do run out. Groundwater supplies and aquifers in places like the U.S. Southeast replenish at a very fast rate. It's an incredibly humid, arid, and wet area. And for that, the groundwater supplies replenish rapidly. It's not the same in the desert. And so generally, whenever you start pumping groundwater out of the aquifers below ground, you usually don't see that they replenish quickly or at all, at least within any practical amount of time, like you would in other regions. So eventually, you just start to run out of water. And this has been an issue that has been quietly coming up and has actually been an absolute crisis if you listen to it off of the public statements that are made, it's an absolute crisis that's going on in the Southwest at the moment, and they're quietly trying to see about curbing water consumption in this area without telling people, look, you're just going to have to move because there literally is not enough water to support all the people who are down here at this point. That is the same thing that happened in Tehran. They just never told anyone that there are too many people living there. They let people keep moving in and keep consuming water like it's a tropical area, and now they're out of water.
Well, I'm already packing my bags as we speak right now. I'm going to go ahead and pack up some spare shirts, some spare underwear, and things like that, and we're going to have to get ready to head back out, I guess. It was a nice little vacation here in Salt Lake, but it was nice knowing y'all folks. We're gonna probably find somewhere with a little extra drinking water, I think. Jeez, man.
Yeah, and something else that's interesting, folks, this is something wildly interesting, is that Salt Lake City actually does not get its water from the Great Salt Lake. A lot of people would think that, but the salinity is so high in the Great Salt Lake's water, it's practically like pulling straight from an ocean. It's actually even worse, at least in terms of salinity content. So there are a couple of places that Salt Lake City gets its water from. And these are, of course, publicly accessible. So, before someone says, wait a minute, don't talk about it because someone could go and pour a whole bunch of poison in it. Don't worry, they're guarded heavily, but these are the locations. One is the Deer Creek Reservoir right down here. This is an artificially made reservoir that is specifically for freshwater supply, primarily. And also people use it for recreation, of course. Then there is also, further on up, the Jordanelle Reservoir, also made for freshwater reasons. And we also have the Rockport Reservoir, which is one of the main above-ground reservoirs, which is tapped for freshwater here in the city. And also the Echo Reservoir, which generally is a reserve reservoir and used for backup supplies if the situation was ever needed. Outside of that, Salt Lake City also draws most of its water from underwater ground reservoirs, or as they're called, aquifers, and use large industrial pumps to be able to pump the water out and then into the freshwater supply system. Generally,
they get a lot of water. They get a lot of water from snow melting off the mountains and running down too.
Oh, yeah, that is true, too. But that's a seasonal thing. That usually isn't a year-round staple. That's something that they harvest seasonally whenever those snow melts begin in the spring and throughout the summer. But generally, that's how Salt Lake City gets its water. And that sort of a scenario is very similar for practically every city within this region. Las Vegas gets its water directly from Lake Powell and Lake Mead, created by the Hoover Dam. Or they get them from underground aquifers, which use industrial pumps to be able to access the water with, so on and so forth. It's like that with every single major city here in the Southwest. So generally, if you look at Tehran, while we are laughing at them right now, and I would have to say the kind of mismanagement that we're seeing in Iran from this whole deal is laughable at the moment, I'm going to be honest with y'all. Literally every single politician right now that is from a U.S. southwestern state, every representative and every senator is looking down the barrel of the gun of the exact same situation that's plaguing Tehran right now happening here. And just because it hasn't happened yet, no one's bringing it up. And although everyone knows it's coming around the corner, they're also not bringing it up either because they don't want to create any sort of panic or a situation that necessarily hasn't formed yet, at least at the moment. But Tehran is a cautionary tale for a lot of people that if you live in an arid area, you either need to have some sort of population control in place to where only a certain number of people can live within that area and no further than that number can be allowed to live within the area just because of the limit of the water supplies that are available, or there has to be some other regimens brought into place to ensure the maintenance of the natural water supplies and the complete issue of overconsumption, which is now facing arid desert regions, a lot like Tehran. So I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can from the knowledge that I have on this. But actually, funnily enough, folks, my knowledge of this hasn't come from researching the Tehran water crisis situation. It actually came from researching the American situation first years ago, because it has been an ongoing problem throughout the whole U.S. Southwest, including places like California. And there's been endless ideas as to how they fix it. And one of the craziest ideas, folks, this one is one that I cannot understand. And you wouldn't believe this, Matthew, but this is actually what they're wanting to do. They're wanting to tap into Chicago's water pumps that are in the Great Lakes and build a water pipeline all the way across the United States into the Southwest to just pump water out of the Great Lakes and then supply it into the U.S. Southwest, which is also a terrible idea.
Yeah, it's wild. I don't think Iran's going to be doing anything like that, though, like over there in their country. I don't think Iran's going to be building pipelines to anything. I don't think they're capable of that. So I think Iran's screwed.
Yeah, I think they're basically screwed. It's not going to turn out all too well for them here in the future. But outside of the whole Iran crisis and ongoing situation there, we also were able to hear that Iraq has stated today through its foreign ministry to the U.S. Secretary of War, commenting on Iraq regarding the issue of Iranian-backed militias in Iraq. He stated that the matter is very serious and reaffirmed that Iraq is an ally of the United States. So it does make it clear the Iraqi government is aligned to the United States of America, just in case any people were wondering. In the meantime, the Israelis are also talking about the considerations of preparing disproportionate measures, if required, defense officials said, as its Air Force intensifies strikes in Lebanon amid Hezbollah's efforts to rebuild its weapons systems. Officials said Israel's current policy is to escalate even at risk of war. Which is always great to hear. We always love to know that peace is always on the forefront of the minds of everyone in the Middle East. Although apparently the Israelis believe in the concept of pushing it all the way up until a war. Although they just secured a peace in the region just recently, a little while ago. But moving on out of the Middle East, well, actually, there's one more thing that we have to cover in the Middle East generally, is that Turkey has now issued arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and 36 other Israeli officials. So if any of those Israeli officials or Netanyahu steps foot in Turkey, they are going to be arrested on the spot. So that is now the official stance of the Republic of Turkey's government.
And on what grounds are they issuing arrest warrants for? Like, what's the charge?
They claim that it's crimes against humanity.
For the actions in Gaza, I'm assuming?
Yeah, it's that whole deal. It's an extended continuation of that whole thing still.
Interesting. I don't think they were planning on going to Turkey anyway, so I think Netanyahu and the gang are probably going to be okay, because I don't think they were heading over there to Erdogan's place anyway.
Yeah, I don't think they're really on the best of terms between the two there. And while they're not going to be shooting each other anytime soon, they certainly are going to be incredibly unfriendly to each other. We don't know if the Israelis are going to reciprocate that and also issue arrest warrants for Erdogan and top Turkish officials. We're not incredibly sure about that, but it is still quite interesting and also showing an ongoing shift within internal Turkish affairs and also the way that they approach foreign policy, which is quite interesting and incredibly odd, at least for the Turks. But moving on from that and outside the Republic of Turkey, it is time for us to travel on out of the Middle East and on towards the Americas, because we have a decent amount of news that has come out of the Americas over the course of the day. But before we get on into all of that news, I do have to say that there's been a lot of people here tonight. I got to thank all of y'all so much for being here with us so far and watching. If you've enjoyed, make sure to subscribe. We're here every single day, 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, and we're always happy to have each and every single one of y'all here. But before we get on into the rest of this news, and particularly the analysis and details coming out of the Americas today, I do want to take a little bit of a moment to get to chit-chat with some of y'all and answer a couple of questions from the chat. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first 3 Super Chat questions, our first one here goes to none other than Bobby, also known as LC39A. He puts in a very generous $100 support, a massive 100 right there. And thank you very much, Bobby, for that support and always helping to keep the channel running with that massive support all the time. He said, when do you believe laser weapons will become operational?
And that is a great question, Bobby. And the answer is tomorrow. We are practically on the cusp of mass fielding laser-based weaponry or directed energy weapons, as they're called, pretty much right now. Some countries have actually started to try and field those on warships, most particularly the British with the Dragon's Fire system, and also the Japanese naval self-defense forces as well. We've seen that they are starting to try and implement that on the naval scale first, considering the ships are the most likely platform to be able to load on a laser-based defense system and carry it around effectively first. But a lot of countries, like the United States, are literally just around the corner from fielding large numbers of directed energy weapons or lasers. It's really crazy to think that that is the case, but we have pretty much been on the cusp of that the entire time we've been covering news here on the channel, really for the past 2 years. We have seen that here in the United States, the big system here is the Thor. And let me go see if I can show y'all the Thor laser system. Let's see. Laser weapon. And let me go get it here. Let me go see if I can get y'all a picture of this. And here it is. This is generally it. This is the Thor. It's a 20-foot Conex box or a container, an ISO standard container, that has a large radome on top. And using this system, it is a directed energy weapon that is able to engage and shoot down drones. It doesn't really look like a laser system like the Dragon's Fire from the United Kingdom or the Iron Beam from Israel and other countries, but it does work pretty much just like one. And so this system is going to be put into service here in the near future. And there's also a couple of other sorts of laser systems or directed energy weapons that we're also looking at putting into service here in the U.S. In the incredible near future, within the next 2 years, most likely. So it's quite literally just around the corner. Now, as far as how this is going to be changing warfare, this is going to start combating the drone warfare that we're seeing right now, at least at the strategic side of things, pretty easily. Kamikaze drones are going to be dealt with efficiently once these are put into service, especially if they're put on any sort of a truck-based mobile platform, because at that point you won't have to be relying on a gunner with a machine gun to have some pretty decent gunnery skills or gunnery training to try and lead the target and shoot it down. All you would have to do is detect the drone, line up the laser, and then fire a short burst, and it'll take the drone down immediately, meaning that a lot of the strategic drones that we're seeing right now will start to fade away into obscurity once more and become obsolete. One thing that will be questionable, however, is how in the world cruise missiles are going to handle modern directed energy weapons. They may also be susceptible to being destroyed and shot down as well by these sorts of systems, which means that there may be a role, at least for the hypersonic missiles of the future, in their ability to be able to evade being burned up and then taken out by a directed energy weapon being aimed right at them. So that might actually be the reason why hypersonics start to see a re-emergence as an important weapon system, at least in modern day, and that might be the only reason, is to avoid directed energy weapons, which would have an incredibly easy time dealing with slower flying drones and subsonic cruise missiles, but would have a near impossible time actually engaging and shooting down any hypersonic missiles.
I thought the Thor system, I thought it was a microwave system instead of a laser-based system. I thought this thing was more about scrambling the signal between the controller and the drone itself than necessarily about, directing energy to actually like burn it out of the sky or something like that.
From what I knew, it was a directed energy weapon. It says that here on this title of this post, but also down here it then says microwave weapon.
Microwave is a form of directed energy. Laser is light energy, and microwave is radio energy. So I think they're meaning the same thing there with that.
Huh, interesting. Let me go see if I can find another U.S. Directed energy weapon. Let's see here. Let me go see if I can find one. Let's see here. The Valiant Eagle. That one's old. That one apparently didn't make it off the ground. Let's see here. The Thor. There's the Thor again. And then there's the Dragonfire. The Dragonfire is basically the laser defense system of the West currently. This is the British one, though. And here is the picture from the testing range of them firing the weapon. It was pretty cool. It was like a giant phaser from Star Trek. But outside of that, this is probably more so what you're talking about, Bobby, and also what Matthew's talking about with the laser-based systems instead of the Thor, which is kind of like a microwave more so. But generally, these are quite literally right around the corner and probably only about a year or two away at this point. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And a humongous thanks to you so much once again, Bobby, for that unbelievably massive support. Because folks like you help this channel to keep running. You make us have the ability, before I start talking like the former president, you help us to have the ability to make this thing possible. And I gotta say that we are massively thankful and appreciative for your support, because you help us to keep the lights on and keep that Costco chicken warm. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, in our second super chat, it's going to go to Chris's mom. And Chris's mom puts in a $50 support. Thank you very much.
And really technological prowess that we have as a people, as a civilization generally. But because of that, it's brought on new challenges that we've never seen before. Like, for example, practically every water reservoir in America being depleted in most places that don't see large amounts of rainwater. So it is quite an issue. And I would have to say, Hokey Redneck, a big thanks to you for the support and sharing that with us, because I personally didn't know exactly about this reservoir But we did pass by it, and there were signs saying to go that way to go see it. And I was like, oh, that must be a really big one, and that must be pretty neat. But still, a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again, and a huge thanks to you for going out of your way to support this channel and helping it to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, we would have never been able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to ramble about things like population increases and all that sort of stuff, which is quite interesting, at least to me personally. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again, and it is time for us folks to move on back into the rest of the news for the night. And that's going to be moving us on directly into the Americas, as we have been able to hear news out of the capital of Washington, D.C. today that apparently they believe that Russia does not want to stop the war in Ukraine. That was according to the president today, and it appears that he's finally caught on. So very good to see that, and good to know that everyone's on the same page now. Moving on from that and down into the area of the Caribbean, we have also been able to hear, moving our way from the west to the east, that in El Salvador, AC-130 gunships, particularly the AC-130J, have arrived in El Salvador as a part of a growing regional troop buildup linked to possible operations in Venezuela, according to the New York Times. AC-130Js are largely unusable in most airspaces, except for ones where there is uncontested air superiority, meaning that if the United States of America ever uses these aircraft, it is going to be in a situation where the Venezuelan Air Force and the Venezuelan Air Defense Forces have ceased to exist. Meaning, also from that if we do conduct defensive actions against Venezuela, it's pretty much guaranteed at this point that we're going to be destroying the Venezuelan Air Force and Air Defense Forces outright, so that way these aircraft have the skies that they're able to work in. Otherwise, we would never be able to use these aircraft in combat operations. Moving on from that news, however, and further on over and towards Venezuela, we have also been able to hear that the Venezuelans tried to flex their muscles today and flew their only F-16s over the city of Maracay, just to the west of Caracas.
It's weird to me that they operate U.S.-made aircraft like that. It's just astonishing every time I see it.
Yeah, it really is something. And these are the only four that they have. These are the only four F-16s in their whole Air Force. They were in one place at one time, all flying. So quite interesting to see, but that doesn't really mean much. And also, these are quite old F-16s. I think they're F-16As, which I don't even think they are capable of using the AIM-120s. So they are very limited in their abilities. However, we also saw that the United States Southcom Command did conduct a strike on a new boat again today, which we were able to see in this clip here. Once again, they censored the middle of the vessel. I have no idea why they're starting to do that, but they did censor the middle of the vessel, and then the strike happened right there, knocking on another vessel, killing several people on board, and also destroying anything that was on the vessel as well.
They're certainly not doing a good job when it comes to trying to dispel the fears that there's no proper intelligence behind these strikes when they carry them out by blurring stuff out. I'm not understanding why they're doing that.
Yeah, I'm not really understanding it either. And to be entirely honest with y'all folks, the current administration is not really doing too good at dispelling any concerns that these vessels may or may not have cartel members on board. We saw that one of the people who were claimed to be a part of the cartel was actually released from U.S. custody and is going to be returned back to Colombia with no charges being pressed by the United States or Colombia, which would largely suggest on the face of it that that person was not involved in any illicit or cartel operations whatsoever, from what we can tell, which generally would lead us to believe that any strike could have innocent persons on board the vessel, or there may not even be anyone involved in cartel operations on board these vessels, which is fairly questionable. But moving on from that, we also got to see that the United States Marine Corps' F-35Bs from the VMFA 225 Vikings were airborne today over the Eastern Caribbean, and the pictures that came out from this went hard. I thought they looked really good. They looked great. It's neat to see the F-35Bs. Also with external pylons for AIM-9s, which is also pretty unique to see in operation as well. It gives it a radar cross-section if y'all don't know. So very interesting that he shows that sort of a loadout. Moving on from that, though, and on down into the area of Suriname, if I'm saying that correctly, we also got to see that Admiral Halsey, who is still the commander of U.S. Southcom, did leave the area today and apparently returned back to Miami in the United States, where U.S. Southcom headquarters is currently located at. Right now, we are seeing that the U.S. is continuing to keep a large force disposition within the area and is continuing to conduct armed strikes against Venezuelan vessels inside of international waters, not within the territorial waters of Venezuela. The situation is incredibly tense, and it is still believed at the moment that the United States will eventually conduct armed strikes on land against Venezuela and the Venezuelan government, and it's only a matter of time. We have also heard rumors as a result of that Maduro is apparently willing to step down if the U.S. guarantees him amnesty, removes the bounty on him, and also provides a comfortable exile. It does appear that at least that is something that is being considered. And we also see a note here adding on that apparently an anonymous source spoke to the Atlantic and suggested the U.S. offer Maduro a similar agreement to entice him to step down. Either way, some sort of an offer is being given either by Maduro or the U.S. to Maduro to try and step down and just walk away and allow for his regime to end inside of Venezuela. Nevertheless, a lot of people have been talking about this sort of offer, whether it was given by Maduro or the U.S. is unclear, but it is an offer that is apparently up in the air out there somewhere. And a lot of people are wondering, should the U.S. Accept that offer, or should Maduro accept that offer if it was being provided by the United States? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So now that we are hearing that there are reports saying that Maduro is willing to step down if the U.S. provides him amnesty, that is the reporting right now. Should the USA accept that if that offer is indeed true? And about 40% said yes, it should be accepted because it achieves U.S. aims and it's very logical, while 27% said it seemed like a bogus story, and another 26% said no, Maduro must be removed by force, and agreements are too late and too little. So I would say personally, our objective here is to get rid of Maduro's regime, which is very aligned with China. And also the U.S. is alleging that he's also a cartel leader. So the goal is to get Maduro out of that position. So that's the stated goal of the U.S. officials. So if he's agreeing to step down and all he wants in return is amnesty, which basically let him go live on an island somewhere on his own, and he doesn't bother anybody from that point forward, I would say it seems logical to accept that offer, unless the U.S. simply wants to make a big spectacle out of it and start going and invading Venezuela. So, to me, I'm really honestly not sure if that claim is true about the whole offer of amnesty and this whole situation of Maduro walking away. I personally have some doubts about the story myself because it sounds too good to be true. But if it is, though, the U.S. should definitely accept that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, the aim would be logical. I would have to be able to 40%, but I'd also have to say I'm quite questionable whether this was actually offered or not as well. And I am actually more so leaning towards it probably wasn't offered because why in the world will we be offering that now to Maduro if that's the case, when we have completely rejected anything that seems close to that in the past? I would also say to that degree, the United States has dug itself too deep into actually having to oust Maduro. And considering that Maduro is getting support from the Russians at this point, he may be a little bit more comfortable in just staying there and thinking that he might be able to slug it out with the United States and end up making it out somehow just due to the additional weapon support. Either way, at this point, I would say that it would probably just be better to continue on with the current plan that we're doing and just overthrow him through force of arms instead of trying to find some way to negotiate him out. On top of that, if we negotiate him out, we're going to have to give him some sort of a golden parachute practically to get him out. And at that point, that might be a little bit insulting, at least to the U.S. public, that the guy that we're saying is evil and has to be overthrown is also going to get a golden parachute via the taxpayer to then go live out the rest of his life comfortably elsewhere in exile. Also, another thing I have to say, folks, just to be a little bit honest with y'all, keeping a guy like that alive is not a good idea. He's like, just to be honest with y'all, if the U.S. goes down there and has to do anything to Venezuela, he's got to die. You can't have a guy like that living in exile for the foreign policy and statesmanship purposes of this. He can try and facilitate or orchestrate rebellions in exile. And he can also eventually overthrow the current government from exile and return. That's always been a huge threat historically whenever anyone survives being overthrown as a leader of a government. So generally, not to just be completely straight up with y'all and make it sound brutal, but this business is brutal. If we do anything to Venezuela, we're going to have to charge him on some high crimes and have him executed. Because any other way, he'll live in exile and might be able to form a government in exile, create an uprising in exile. There could be an endless amount of things that could happen if he continues to stay alive in exile somewhere. So it generally wouldn't be a good move for him to remain alive, at least at that point, or he would have to be put in U.S. prison indefinitely inside the United States. In some way, however, he's going to have to remain within the direct jurisdiction of the United States if he remained alive, or he would not be alive, one or the other. That's something that we did with Saddam Hussein, if many of y'all recall, back in 2003. When we went into Iraq, we knew that Saddam Hussein couldn't remain alive because the Fedayeen would continue to listen to him, and the Fedayeen would continue to give very significant armed resistance in the name of Saddam to overthrow any government that we would try and create inside of Iraq. So for that reason, there was a show trial held by the Iraqi government. He was clearly found guilty, and then he was executed, I believe, later that day, just to ensure that there was no government in exile that could be created and so on. So it's a nasty business, but generally that's what you have to assure, at least in these sorts of situations, where it's believed that someone may actually have diehard loyals inside the country, even after they're ousted from any form of leadership. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. But that's what we would have to do. It's not really a great move, and it doesn't really look that good, but that's what the United States would largely have to pull off if we wanted to conduct such an action against Venezuela. And also, I see a lot of people talking about, let's see, David said, it might sound cruel and brutal, but look at what Lenin did. He took over Russia from a foreign country by gaslighting rebellions. Well, I mean, it's really tough to talk about foreign policy because a lot of and I got to say this, I have morals and I believe in things. But the thing is, folks, is that when we talk about foreign policy here on the channel, foreign policy is completely removed from most humanistic morals, which is really the tough part of having to analyze it. And over the years, we've just gotten into the swing of it and gotten used to it. And looking at history and knowing what people have done in history, you just go, this is what has to be done. Generally, folks, I would be honest with you all, I'm not really a big fan of the idea of the U.S. going down to a country like Venezuela, setting up an interim government, and then telling that interim government, you are going to have a trial, find this man guilty, and put him up to capital punishment. I generally don't like the idea of that. It would just be better, in my opinion, to leave the guy in exile. But leaving a guy like that in exile can create a whole myriad of problems that we would not want to deal with later. So for that reason, for more so a business perspective than anything, with how we work foreign policy, if we went down there, we would have to find some interim government and tell that interim government, you're going to have to find this guy guilty and take him on out, much like we did with Saddam and the interim Iraqi government that the U.S. Created post-invasion in Iraq. We went and told them, you got to find him guilty and you've got to take him out. And then they went forward with that and did that. And generally, that was better for wear than worse, if you look back at it as to how things could have gone if that action was not taken. But I hope that does address that the best I can, at least with how foreign policy works. Nasty business sometimes. This is where you get your hands dirty, but this is how we would have to do it nonetheless. But moving on from the Caribbean and generally the Americas, it is time for us to move on into Europe and the war in Ukraine and all of the ongoing developments that have been happening across all of Western Europe today, or really the NATO alliance. And so, moving us on into our first and most important piece of news of the day, we were able to hear that according to some senior German military officials, they stated that Russia still has enough military strength to carry out a small, limited attack on NATO territory as early as tomorrow. So it does appear that the Germans still believe that the prevalence and threat of a Russian armed invasion against the NATO alliance is still a possibility at this point. This is coming as drones have been spotted over Liège in Belgium earlier today, as air traffic at the Liège airport was halted again this morning after another drone was spotted near the FedEx facilities. The first daytime incident since drone activity began over Belgian airports and bases, with flights resuming around 8 a.m. after an hour of disruption because of the drones. So it does appear that there are still ongoing drone incursions over Belgium even today. They're still going on, which is absolutely crazy to see. Moving on from that, however, and on up into the area of the Gotland Island, we have been able to hear that multiple sources are now starting to call the Gotland Island a Baltic stronghold. this is nothing new. This is actually something that's been known all the way back during the Cold War, that the Gotland Island is a strategic one to control and operate. The Soviets knew that back in the day. The U.S. knew that back in the day as well. And it was already known back then that while Sweden was a neutral country and not a NATO state during the Cold War, that if a larger war broke out, it was expected that Sweden would join the NATO alliance or operate as a de facto NATO member, and NATO forces would go ahead and occupy the Gotland Island to stop the Soviet Union from being able to control such a key island within such a key navigable waterway as the Baltic Sea. It does appear that NATO has now started to work on fortifying this island and bringing that Cold War dream into a fruition to pretty much treat the Gotland Island as a fortress in the middle of the Baltic. Outside of that, we've also been able to hear that Poland and Romania are working on building a drone wall currently. And according to the Associated Press, both Poland and Romania are deploying Merops, which is a mobile air defense system already tested in Ukraine. The system can be mounted even on a pickup truck and is capable of detecting and shooting down drones, using artificial intelligence to navigate when satellite or electronic communication is jammed. NATO reportedly plans to eventually deploy Merops along the entire eastern border of the alliance, as well as to protect critical infrastructure sites in other key countries throughout the area. It does appear that we are continuing to take every single concerted effort that we possibly can, at least for now, to be able to ensure that the Russian Federation will have as difficult a time as possible in conducting any sort of armed or offensive actions against NATO. The Russians still appear to be poised to try and conduct an armed action eventually against NATO, and we also know that their time to do such an action is going to be incredibly small, as we have heard that Lukoil is now going to be ceasing operations in Moldova on November 21st. The Moldovan market is an incredibly small one for the Russians, and really a small market for any commodity in the entirety of the world. But still, this is continuing to show us that the Russian Federation is seeing shrinking markets. And the Moldovan market, while a minuscule one, is only a litmus test for the larger markets of Turkey, India, and China, which have seen their purchase orders shrinking rapidly over the past week. And in their stay, we have seen that Middle Eastern oil contracts have skyrocketed as replacements and substitutes for Russian oil. This is leaving the Russian government with less and less money to work off of and to continue to finance the war with, and is continuing to put them into a very difficult spot. They can either try and continue the war and go bankrupt in the process, or they can try and force an end to the war through more creative means, like starting a larger war with NATO, which might end up becoming nuclear. That seems to be more so the direction that they're going in, is the latter rather than the former. And so, for that reason, that is why we are seeing that the NATO alliance, including the frontier states and the Germans, are continuing to sound the alarm bells and make every necessary preparation to be able to ensure that if that day comes that war is brought to Europe, they will be ready every measure and every step of the way. Still, it does appear that a lot of people are actually talking about the German defense minister's comments about a limited attack that could happen at any time. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so Germany is warning that Russia could launch a limited attack at any time against NATO. And do you think that 59% of the audience said yes, it seems very possible for Russia? While 24%, said no, it sounds like an overblown fear. And 13% said it seems like a 50-50 chance. And excuse me for hacking in the middle of that right there. I was getting a little bit of that mountain air in my lungs. But I would personally say Russia launching a limited attack on NATO, it is possible. I would personally go with the 13%. I would say it's a 50-50 chance of that. Germany seems to be alluding to a limited ground incursion into a NATO country, most likely a Baltic state. So that's something we've been saying for a long time that could happen at any point if Russia gets